Could we see a huge trade between the Montreal Canadiens and the Washington Capitals this offseason? We'll discuss that possibility. Plus, we have some of the game's top stars like McDavid and Crosby hitting important milestones today. The Toronto Maple Leafs have signed an amateur goalie as a backup to Samsonov for tonight under some odd circumstances. Plus, we have some other updates around the NHL, including a huge signing in New Jersey with one of their top prospects. And it's also a huge day in U.S. college hockey. We'll discuss that outcome and some other prospects that could be entering the pro hockey scene out of college hockey very soon after tonight's game, coming up next. Well, welcome back to another video here, Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here today. Before we jump into the news, though, I just want to do a quick reminder. A few days ago, I had posted on the channel's community tab that there was actually a promotion going on through our merchandise company. There's actually a 25% off promo going on right now. So I just wanted to remind everybody about that. I'll put a thing here on the screen just in a second, but all our t-shirts are available. There's other designs as well, but this is the most common, like their classic one. And of course, the hoodie I have on as well, same idea. So everything on the store that you see below the video in the YouTube connected store down below through Spring is all 25% off. I'll now show you a graphic here on the side that will indicate the promo code. I believe is Friends and Fans 25. So use that promo code. It's a great time if you've been considering making any Top Shelf Hockey merchandise purchases, which certainly helps support the channel. Is greatly appreciated. But now is a good time to do so at a reduced price. Now, as I mentioned, we also have some important news to talk about today. We saw some pretty significant milestones achieved by some of the game's top stars today. Connor McDavid playing, of course, for the Oilers against the San Jose Sharks today. Certainly the game is not over as of yet as I record this video, but he's already in enough points to hit 150 on the season, including his 63rd goal, which was point number 150. So he's only one of 6 NHL players to ever have that many points in one single season. So I challenge you through some NHL trivia now. Can you leave a comment down below? No cheating. Don't use Google. But just off your own memory here, off your own knowledge, who are the other 5 players to be able to accomplish this tremendous feat in one NHL season? We also seen Sidney Crosby today put up 3 points as the Penguins defeated the Red Wings to continue their push to be a playoff team again this year. That gets him to 1,500 points even on his NHL career. So it's another huge milestone as Crosby continues to work his way up the all-time greatest list. You have to wonder, with all the games he missed, I believe through a few years there, when he was battling concussion, neck injuries, all that, I think he's missed like over 200 games. Be curious to see what his numbers would look like if that would not have happened and if he would not have had to miss all that time. Such a shame that it impacted him. And of course, you could make an argument as well, not just Crosby, but every NHL player, especially the top level elite ones, going for some of the all-time records. What the pandemic did with all the shortened season and games that they missed because of that too. It's an unfortunate situation that will obviously lead us to never really know what the outcomes could have been otherwise. Lots of updates from around the league when it comes to some injuries and roster moves. The Boston Bruins are getting Taylor Hall back tonight. They've created the necessary cap space to do so by moving defenseman Derek Forward and forward Nick Foligno to long-term injury reserve. Now, of course, the only ability to do that right now is it really boils down to when injuries happen, because we have less than 10 games left for all these teams. So if these players have been out for a while and they haven't been placed on LTIR, but it's been happened at least with 10 games remaining in the season, then they're eligible to go on that. So obviously that plays a big role, because as we're going to talk about next year with the Leafs, they have a similar situation. But Hall's been rumored to be ready to go for a little while here. They've been waiting to create the necessary cap space, but be big for him to get back on the lineup as the regular season starts to wind down. But as I mentioned, some big news out of Toronto today. The Maple Leafs have signed a University of Toronto goalie, Jet Alexander, to an amateur tryout to back up Ilya Samsonov tonight, as goaltender Matt Murray is unable to go, and they've already sent Joseph Wall back down to the minors. So essentially, in order for them to recall Wall, they would have had to have done so on an emergency basis, because they don't have the necessary salary cap space, and you can't do an emergency recall until you've already played a game shorthanded, which they haven't done as of yet. I know when I seen Wall return down to the minors yesterday, it was kind of a skeptical thing. I know lots of people were talking about it. I was wondering what was going on because you wouldn't have thought that Murray would have been ready yet. Obviously, the Marlies team needs help down there too, as their season's winding down. So you got to wonder if it was more about helping the Marlies or what it was. Sheldon Keefe said that he was hopeful that Murray was going to be able to go. But Murray didn't go to the morning skate today, and he said he wasn't sure what the plan was going to be if he was unable to at least back up tonight. Well, now we know they're signing Jet Alexander to an amateur tryout, which would be a big night for him. Now, of course, this is not the first time Jet Alexander's kind of played this kind of role. He also did this back on December the 1st, 2021, where he had to be the emergency backup goaltender for the Colorado Avalanche as they came to town as well. So certainly not completely new to him, but still a big deal to get into an NHL game, even if you're just sitting on the bench. Is still something that's huge in that regard. So essentially here with Matt Murray being hurt, but he got hurt with less than 10 games to go in the regular season. So if he's not eligible to go in long-term injury reserve, that's what would have to happen, though, to create the necessary cap space for another player to come up through a regular recall. And so that's why this is kind of gets really complicated. If their salary cap space wasn't so tight, it'd be different. But I believe they have around like 38,000. They don't have enough to do a full recall, which complicates things along with when the injury happened, LTIR not being available. So as of like today, because of their roster situation, if they wanted to sign Matthew Knies today, their top prospect that's playing the championship game in U.S. college hockey tonight, they wouldn't be able to do that, at least not today. Now, the salary cap situation is going to possibly be changing. It changes every day, of course, and it's going to depend on how things go. I mean, if Matt Murray can play the next game, then they can send other players down. So like Wayne Simmonds, for example, was also recalled to play in the final home game for the Leafs tonight. So they could send Wayne Simmonds back down, which will obviously create some space as well. And then they can sign Matthew Knies and put him on the roster. So that's possible too. If Matt Murray can't go, though, if he's unable to play in the remaining games, or at least back up, then that's going to create a scenario where they can't really, it's going to be complicated to do a recall. Joseph Wall may not be able to come back up, or if he does come back up, that's going to prevent them from maybe signing Matthew Knies. It really complicates things, really from a day-to-day standpoint. Now, they can probably get creative and figure out a way to sign Knies if that indeed is something that Knies wants to do, and they're mutually agreeing for him to come out of college and then to do that. But it's going to be complicated. Thankfully, they don't have to worry about it today because Matthew Knies is still playing his U.S. college hockey season, but it will be over after tonight. And I was mentioning discussions will get underway as early as tomorrow, but it's going to really boil down to that salary cap space. So we'll see. So Matt Murray's injury, again, is really having a major impact here, not just on the goaltending situation, but the overall cap situation because of the timing and everything of it. And it really complicates things drastically here for their cap. And we'll see. But like I said, if he's able to play in a few days' time, then that might be they might be able to get Knies on the roster. But we'll see. It's more than complicated for sure. The Ottawa Senators also confirmed, now that they're eliminated from the playoffs, they confirmed that Thomas Chabot, Jacob Chikrin, Travis Hamonic will definitely not be back. And of course, Austin Watson was also injured in the last game against the Panthers, and he's done for the season as well. They took a block shot off the foot, and he already had problems with another foot that he was playing through another injury. So now both feet have issues, and I guess he's having a hard time walking. So Watson can join the walking wounded in Ottawa for players that will not be returning for the remaining games here to finish out the regular season, which very well could mean in the case of Watson, because he is a pending UFA, that he may have played his final game with the Sens. He's a 31-year-old, certainly has, played a decent role for them, but I'm not overly confident that he would be brought back. So I think his time in Ottawa might be coming to a close, but he served his purpose there, and I'm sure he'll be able to get a contract likely somewhere else next year. Some other big games tonight with playoff implications. Of course, we already seen a couple today. The Buffalo Sabres were able to beat the Carolina Hurricanes in regulation 4-3 at home, so that's a huge win. Still quite complicated and unlikely they get into the playoffs, but it keeps them alive for another game, another day. They still have great math on their side here, so they still need other teams to lose as well as to keep winning, which is going to be complicated, but They got to do what they got to do and keep their season going. This makes it interesting for sure. The Penguins, on the other hand, had a 5-1 win over Detroit. Like I said, with Crosby picking up 3 points at 1,500 in that game. So, of course, that puts the Penguins back into a playoff spot. So, it's really between the Penguins, the Panthers, and the Islanders. 2 of those 3 teams are very, very likely going to get in. Buffalo is technically still alive, but it's complicated and really unlikely they do it. But, like I said, they're making it interesting at the very least. The Nashville Predators and Winnipeg Jets do battle tonight. That's another huge game. The Jets are trying to kind of hold on here and keep a playoff spot, whereas the Predators are still, fighting their way back in the conversation. If Nashville were to win that game, they very well will put themselves in a good spot to maybe be able to get in. I mean, they've been playing well lately, whereas the Jets have not. The Flames have been inconsistent, so it's complicated. But that's a huge game with big implications for sure. The Islanders play the Flames tonight, or the Flyers tonight, sorry. So the Flyers, theoretically, that should be a winnable game for the Islanders to keep pace with the Penguins. We see the Panthers playing the Capitals. The Caps haven't been good lately. So again, there's a good possibility we might see the Pens, Isles, and Panthers all keep pushing the pace here along with the Sabres so that nothing really changes in the overall wildcard race in the Eastern Conference. In the West, though, as I mentioned, the Flames are playing the Canucks, actually. So, again, the Flames and the Jets and the Predators all in action. So we'll see the big games all around, which will have major impacts on the overall standings here as they fight for wildcard spots. As I mentioned earlier, there's also a dedicated video on the channel from this morning if you haven't already seen it, so I won't go into too much detail, but none of that gets overly complicated anyway. But the Devils have signed their top prospect, defenseman Luke Hughes, who was the number 4 overall pick in the draft, just 2 drafts back in 2021. Leaves the University of Michigan after a phenomenal season there. More than a point per game player. Had an absolutely a huge year of development and ready for that next step. So he'll practice with the team, and it's likely he gets into a game before the end of the regular season. They've essentially said at this point that he'll practice, start learning everything he needs to learn to get acclimated with the team and the teammates, and be ready to be called upon when they need him. But the GM, Tom Fitzgerald, said it might be an option to give a veteran defenseman or two, a little bit of rest going into the playoffs to be able to work him into the lineup, but they'll have to see where things go. So it's a huge signing there. In New Jersey, we'll join his brother Jack as a dual threat here of the Hughes brothers on the same team. Now, as I mentioned, it's also a huge day for many other prospects. Luke Hughes was just eliminated, of course, from the NCAA Frozen Four Championship. So his season was over with the University of Michigan. And of course, there's going to be some other players that we have to watch here as well. But of course, we saw Boston University and University of Michigan both ousted by the teams that are going to be playing here in the final, which of course is Minnesota and Quinnipiac. Now, of course, in the University of Michigan, we also not only see Luke Hughes sign a big contract, but we also saw the projected number 2 pick in the NHL draft this year, the 43 draft, Adam Fantilli, who's going to be projected a number 1 centerman in the NHL, will be a huge pickup by any team fortunate enough to draft him. As well, of course, the Connor Bedard draft is, Bedard stealing all the headlines and all the spotlight, but Fantilli is going to be a pretty darn good player in his own right. It's going to be a deep draft here at the top, especially. He wins the Hobie Baker Award, so it's quite an accomplishment for somebody, especially who's not drafted yet. So huge kudos to Fantilli for an awesome season at the University of Michigan, and it's quite an honor for him to win that award. But as I mentioned, there's other prospects too. And Fantilli's obviously likely going to play college hockey at the University of Michigan again next year. At least that's the expectation. At this point, once he's drafted, I guess he could sign, but it seems unlikely. But we'll have to wait and see, hear more from his camp closer to draft time. But the championship game tonight between Minnesota and Quinnipiac is going to be very interesting. Of course, Quinnipiac is led by Skylar Brindamore, the son of Rod Brindamore, head coach of the Carolina Hurricanes, longtime NHL veteran, should be in the Hockey Hall of Fame in my opinion. But Skylar Brindamore could be a player who turns pro and signs. Hard to say. I believe he's an Oilers pick, so hard to say if he'll actually sign there. There was some speculation that he may not get signed in Edmonton and may become a free agent. So we'll see about his future. At Minnesota, they have a lot of great prospects. I would think that Minnesota will stand a great chance to win this game. They have some top prospects from the last couple of drafts, including Logan Cooley, of course, Matthew Nyes in Toronto, who we referenced earlier, Brock Faber, and Jimmy Snuggerud, just to name a few others. So lots of guys there that we've seen in the past couple of drafts, some big names having some pretty solid college careers before they're ready to make the pro jump. So certainly going to be interesting to see once this game is done, which of these guys sign pro contracts and join their NHL clubs. I would think that a guy like Snuggerud probably goes back to school. Faber might sign. I'm not sure what his status is going to be. That wouldn't be surprising. Cooley, Muriel could go back for another year as well. That also would not be surprising. And it's expected that Knies and the Leafs will try to get a deal done. But again, we'll have to see. Their complicated cap situation might impact what things could go. I mean, the other thing they could do with Knies, they could still sign him, but make the contract effective for next season instead of this season. That's also another possibility as well. Now, as I mentioned, could we see a huge trade between the Habs and the Capitals? I've seen some articles talking about both of these players in the last number of days being obviously available in the trade market when the offseason fully gets underway. We know that both of these players we're going to talk about have been mentioned leading up to the trade deadline. That's Anthony Mantha in Washington, Mike Hoffman in Montreal. Both players definitely are rumored to be getting moved, get a fresh start. They both have 1 year left of their contract. Of course, Hoffman is a little bit older than Mantha, but both players are certainly well experienced NHL guys at this point. Hoffman into his early 30s now, whereas you get Mantha, who's 28. Mantha's got 1 year left at $5.7 million, whereas Hoffman has a year left at $4.5. So, they're both players that have been proven goal scorers in the past, but have been inconsistent. Now, both players, I've seen Montreal media talking about this possibility, because Mantha had been connected and linked to the Habs previously. There were some rumors floating around and leading to the deadline that Ken Hughes might have interest in Mantha. Obviously a big body forward, with 1 year left, to see if they could take that contract and get him kind of going again at the very least. Maybe he comes in, becomes a player who finds his game and becomes a great piece for them. Or maybe he becomes a player that comes in on a short-term basis, revives his career, and gets moved for picks, kind of like what they were intending to do with Sean Monahan this past season. Of course, Monahan ended up, hurt by December and missed the rest of the season. So I don't know where things are going on his front, if he's going to come back and play for Montreal, or if he gets signed somewhere else, or is this the end of the road for him? I really don't know. Feel bad for Monahan. He's still not that old, but his body's really broken down over the last few years, how much we know for sure. But certainly when it comes to Hoffman and Mantha, both, like I said, they're both players have been questioned on their compete level. I know, obviously, when the former NHL coach Bob Hartley was actually commenting on both of them on Montreal media recently, saying that it's their compete level on both sides that really gets a lot of question marks around each of them. They're both skilled players who can score goals, but it's that compete level, that effort level, that desire to win, that they really wonder if it's really there, or how can you get into there more consistently. And that's half the battle with each of these guys. But they're both in similar scenarios where they're both struggling with their teams. You could tell they could use a fresh start. They could both, they don't make a drastically different amount of money, and they're both on 1 year deals. So essentially, you see this quite often where you find two players that need a fresh start, and then they switch places and see if it works out. I mean, at the end of the day, neither team is really going to be on the hook for anything long term if they do this deal. It may not even be a 1-for-1 trade as well. It might be, structured a little bit differently. But I do think, based on comments we've heard on the rumors on what players have been linked to, and the fact that both these guys are in similar spots, it makes sense that they could swap places in the fresh start. So let me know your thoughts, and we'll discuss further down in the comments. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.